I am Jessica Taylor, and I'm interviewing, oh my God, Bill Lawrence at, what time is it?
It is 5:15.
5:15 on June 19th, 2013, and we're actually at the Lawrence residence.
New Cottage.
New Cottage. Okay, is that the name of it?
Well, we just call it New Cottage because the old house, the river house, is my daughter's in.
Oh, okay. Please state your full name.
William Lindsay Lawrence,
Okay. What is your date of birth?
March 29th, 1947,
Okay. Where were you born?
Norfolk, Virginia.
And what are your parents' names?
My mother's name is Louise, Mary Louise Lindsay. She goes by Louise. Her father was born at Belroy, and her mother was born on the island at the old home place. My dad's name is Louis Lorenzo Lawrence Sr., and he was born in Richmond.
Okay. What did they do?
Dad was an engineer with the government, civil service for 30 odd years, and Mom was a homemaker.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 3 brothers and a sister.
Okay. What do they do?
When they're all on the island. Larry was a banker and retired a year ago. My sister's a homemaker. My brother Lou was a state graduate like I was, a state graduate in engineering, but he ended up teaching drafting, math, and physics at Gloucester High School.
Wow.
And our youngest brother is an administrator of a nursing home. So I have 2 brothers that are retired.
Wonderful. And as for you, I know you've had many lives, but what is your occupation, or was your occupation, or?
Well, I was trained to be a nuclear engineer, and I worked at Surrey for 2 years during the initial startup. And I had a chance to buy land on the island, and that was maybe a deal I couldn't refuse. But it's 85 miles to Surrey, so I had to find another profession. And they were building the community college, so I went back to grad school at William & Mary and got a master's. And I taught math and computers at the local community college for 32 years.
Wow. Okay. And I know this is kind of an obvious question, but when did you come to Gloucester County?
Well, I was raised in Hampton, and we would come over when I was a little kid, and we'd stay at 2 places. My grandmother's old home place that her brother George Smith and her sister Irene lived in. So we'd spend weekends here, or we would spend weekends at my grandmother's sister's house at the courthouse. It's the building between the Masonic Lodge and the First Presbyterian Church, Harry Morris's law office. So I spent many a weekend at that house. And my aunt's husband was B.B. Roan, who was the clerk of court for 54 years or so. So I have fond memories of being up there at the courthouse.
Well, now you have to tell me about them.
Well, Uncle Bernard was a character. I mean, everybody knows stories about B.B. Roan. He was a unique individual. He had no children. His life was at clerk's office. I mean, he'd work Saturdays, he'd work Sundays, and many a time Sunday afternoon, Aunt Grace would say, go over to the courthouse and clerk's office and get your uncle, tell him dinner's gonna be ready in 15 minutes. So, you just walk across the street and court circle, and Uncle Bernard, he was a character. Fond memories. In the back of the house, which is now the parking lot for the church, my aunt had chickens. So she had about I'm guessing a 6 to 8 foot fence, a number of chicken coops, and lots of times we get up, 6 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I want some fresh eggs. We go with her in the backyard and put our hands in a chicken coop, and they never pecked her. But when you're a kid, it seems like they always pecked your hands. So we let her get the eggs most of the time. But that was felt very lucky.
Were you around when the Daffodil Festival and the fair came around at all?
Yeah, we were living here at the time, and we go occasionally. We don't go every year, and that's been going on for 20 some years, I think. Yeah, we built the big house in '74.
Just so the listener would know, where is the big house?
It's about 100 feet away.
Where in Gloucester is it?
It's on Ells Island in Zanoni, on the Ware River.
Okay. So what else about Main Street do you remember? If you could kind of visualize it and walk down from the Court Green.
Well, if you came out Uncle Bernard and Aunt Grace's house, what is now the road that goes to the newest courthouse, that was just an empty field. I mean, it dropped off it was a big ravine. There was a house on the corner across from Masonic Lodge. That is no longer there. It's just an empty space. Tucker's store was there. Next to the Masonic Lodge were two buildings. I think Mr. Stubbs' house was one, and the old shoe shop was the other one. The church manse was between B.B. Roan's house and the present church, and the minister lived there and would visit my aunt quite often. That building was moved sometime in the 70s. Back, and well, it's behind where the old chicken coop used to be. They ended up buying the lot when my aunt died. The church ended up buying the land behind that property, and they moved the manse to that lot. Used to be a church chimes every Sunday morning. That would wake you up.
From which church?
First Presbyterian Church. That one you could really hear. It was right next door. The Newington Church, I think, was a little further down the street, so that's a little not quite as loud. I remember going to Lee's Market to pick up. My aunt would call and get an order. We'd go down and they'd back them up and we'd bring it back. Where Southern States is, and in that shopping center that they're redoing right now, I can remember that was a big field, and they built an A&P. It became Wallace and Gurley, and then they had to fire and burn that down. And that's what they're sort of renovating now, making some doctor's offices, I think, some professional offices of some sort. The Texaco station was there, and there was a building that was used as restrooms that used to be to the right, facing the garage, the service station. It would be to the right. Now, a friend of mine, Joe Brown, who's about 90 now, or 91, remembers when it used to be on the left, and it was a hot dog hamburger stand. And he said that building was moved from Five Gables, which was also Chesapeake Academy. And Jessica, when you came in past the Zanoni store and you made that hard left, if you had gone straight for another 3/4 of a mile, that road ends at Five Gables. So that building, which was sort of a square shape with a pyramid type roof, was moved from Five Gables to the left side of the gas station as a hot dog stand, hamburger stand. Then it was moved to the right as restrooms. And then, I think again in the 70s, it was sawed in half with a chainsaw and put on a blowboy truck. And they were taken up to the Ark area and put back together in the back of a home used as a workshop for the family.
Wow. Do you have any idea how old it was originally?
No, Chesapeake Academy was probably around 1925. So I was able to find a picture of it.
Really? I'd love to see it.
Now with the digital copy, Jessica, you can make it out a whole lot better. Let me think now. Let me show you. Do you have it off now?
Huh?
You have it.
The camera?
Yeah. Or you say everything's going. You just want to edit it.
Yeah, I'll just edit it.
Okay.
We're not really saying anything, so.
Okay. Can you see that building right there?
Mm-hmm, that's it?
Okay, that's it. Then let me show you. Can you see it?
Yeah, I took a picture of it through the lens. Let me see.
Now, just browsing. When I did these several years ago, I could have put my hands right on it. But I was able to find a picture of that building when it was moved. Here we go. See the pyramid shaped roof? Then they cut it in two. See the two halves?
Uh-huh.
And it shows coming up the bypass. And he moved it to the Ark area.
It was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's
People
pretty good
taking
size.
pictures of it and then do that one there. That is just something else. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as a child, what do you remember about the gas station?
Not a whole lot. I don't think my dad ever stopped there for gas. If he did, I don't remember it. But I remember passing by it to go to my aunt's house up at the courthouse. It was white. It was always in pretty good shape. Kept nice and clean. And the road wasn't nearly as close to the pumps as it is now. Not a whole lot. I don't ever remember stopping there.
No.
But I do remember the odd square shape, what became the restrooms, off to the right hand side.
Right. Do you remember anything about Howard Brown or Captain Jack Brown at all?
Well, the only thing I knew about Captain or J.C. Brown is right across on the other side of the river. He ran a fuel storage facility, and with the storage tanks, which were horizontal and up on frames, and they had a gas pump at the end of the pier. So if we wanted boat gas, we could just take our boats over. We call ahead of time. They turn the pump on, and we pump it, and then walk down the pier to the building and pay for the gas. They would deliver, after we had moved here, they were still delivering the gasoline and oil by barge. And then we had one of the big storms, and it did some damage to the pier, and I think they cut it out. So,
Makes
but it was a
sense.
big deal. You see the barge come up, and the fuel tanks and whatnot, and they pump it into the storage tanks.
Yeah. What sort of everyday things like that would you have seen around Main Street that aren't there anymore?
Tucker Building is gone. The Manse is torn down. The two buildings next to the Masonic Lodge have been demolished. There was a hodgepodge shop.
What is a hodgepodge shop?
It was like an odds and ends type. It was a small little cabin, where the debtor's prison is. It was between the debtor's prison and the engineering office, or the older court house. It was right, and then I wasn't on the corner, but back toward the engineering building. That was there, and that was moved, I don't know, in the early 80s, I would think, to the end of Carriage Street, and they kind of used it as a storage facility. and then it wasn't maintained, and the roof started giving way, and it became rotten, and they just demolished it a number of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Like I said, my aunt had chickens in the back. It was very rural. That lot of theirs went back a mile. So, and there was a road, like an old logging road. So a lot of times Sunday afternoon, our dad would take us, and we just walked back down to what became Fox Mill Run.
So we've talked a lot about how Main Street has physically changed over time. How has the way that people use Main Street changed over time?
Well, Hugh Dissinger, who's 91 now, I hope you've interviewed Hugh, grew up there, and he had makes a comment. He said, "This is the only time in my life that I cannot walk to either a grocery store on Main Street or a service station." So I guess with the big box stores, you tend to lose that. So we've lost gas stations, and we've lost local grocery stores. So where people, if you want to call it a little village that was self-sustaining, and you could walk everywhere, you can't do that anymore.
Is that something that you would maybe want to see changed in the future?
Well, it'd be nice for people in the courthouse.
Yeah, definitely. But for the rest of Gloucester, do you feel like the courthouse has a place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very unique. I mean, it's. I'm a docent at the museum, and people, come from all over, and that court circle is very unique. You don't. I don't know of any other in the country. I mean, I'm sure that there might be some, but they are. I'm not familiar with them. And especially with the way the road goes around.
That's nice. And I mean, you've been a voice for preservation for a long time. To someone that doesn't know the value of the court green, what would you say to justify recreating a self-sustaining community?
Well, you want to keep that, I would think, and I mean, I wouldn't mind living in the courthouse, that you would want to maintain that small village atmosphere. And to do that, part of it is walking. Like my Uncle Bernard had an automobile, but the last 10 years of his life he didn't. So they were self-sustaining. As they got older, they called Leeds Market, and the Leeds Market would bring the groceries to the house. And we only talked about a block.
Right.
So I guess now we put people in nursing homes, but in those days they stayed in the house. I think Uncle Bernard died in the house, and my aunt, she may have been in a nursing home last week or two. People tend to stay put.
And that's justification for creating a community that.
Yeah, a lot of my friends, one I play bridge with is building a new house in the courthouse right now.
Wow.
And so they just you get an area that you can walk. We had a number of our bridge friends have moved there, just so that you can walk to a lot of the facilities.
Absolutely. And part of that is really interesting because, you're maybe the third or fourth person I've heard say that if the facilities aren't there, then it's not self-sustaining, it's more of an image. And so I'm wondering, what role can preservationists play in keeping it practical? Keeping it so that it actually serves the community that's immediately around it?
Well, to me, you need to hit a happy balance, and that is, you cannot preserve everything, although it'd be nice. Some things need to be modernized, but we have a unique look in Gloucester, and a look when I was a kid. A lot of the houses, like around where the fire station is, there were a number of homes there that had been demolished. Yeah, but you need the fire department. So, and every time you demolish something, you don't build it back with the same look. So so it has a unique time frame, and as we lose one at a time, you lose that, and what goes back is something newer. So and sometimes better, but different. But you tend to lose that look.
Okay. So going back to, being a kid and kind of living in the time period of that aesthetic, kind of walk me through what you do in a general store or in the hardware store when you go there as a kid.
Well, I remember going into Tucker's store once, and boy, that was, and the stuff on the shelf were toys probably from the 30s. I mean, not a whole lot, but stuff left over from the 30s. So it was like going into an antique store. Dowsville Dutton had the hardware store. And I mean, you could buy anything you could think of, anything, hammer, nail, saws, he had it. And that was further down towards the service station. Mm-hmm. And he was a good friend of my uncle's.
Oh, okay.
The fact is, when my uncle died, he was a Mason, and his Masonic book was given to him by Dowsville Dutton. So one thing I did was return the book back to Dowsville Dutton.
Wow. Small world.
Small world.
So when you walk in, the one time that you went to Tucker's, you walk in, how are you greeted? What's the relationship like?
Well, it was old in the lifetime of the store. It didn't last much longer after visiting there. And I was probably a teenager. Maybe have been even in my 20s when I visited. So it was on its last leg. I think there was one person behind the counter, but there was another customer, and they were talking. And so I just meandered around the store, and when the customer left, we chatted for a little bit. And that's about it. It was dark, I remember. Didn't have a whole lot of modern lighting, so it's not like going into a modern store where it's lit up like a Christmas tree.
Did that make you uncomfortable, or
No, just different.
Just different.
Just different.
Okay, from what you're used to.
Yeah.
And you had gone away from college and been to Raleigh. What's it like coming back?
Wasn't a whole lot of different. One thing, when my wife and I moved back here in '74, one Friday evening we wanted to go out and get a snack of some sort. Went to Main Street, and it was locked up tighter than a drum. There was not a single thing open. We finally found the Dairy Queen up at Ark open. Mm-hmm. So from Gloucester Point to Gloucester Courthouse, there was nothing. Nothing was open.
Wow.
No fast food.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good or a bad thing?
No, that's nice to have.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
More people.
More people?
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard there's a really, divided opinion between, I really like having new people, and I really hate having new people around.
You get a change. Yeah, you good points and bad points. Gloucester, coming up from when I was a kid, I remember coming over on the ferry, even. Once you got past Gloucester Point, it's very rural. It's like going 17 north of the courthouse. Very rural. And we've lost that until you get past the hospital now. It's pretty much just a suburban corridor now from Gloucester Point to the courthouse. So I miss that. The open fields. I mean, a lot of open fields. But if we want to go get a Frosty at Wendy's now, on an evening at 9 o'clock at night, we get in the car and we're there in 7 or 8 minutes to get a Frosty. So you lose one and you gain another. To me, it'd probably be nice to have a little balance between the two. I grew up in Hampton, and it's not like Mercury Boulevard had no buildings on it at all when I was a kid. A bunch of dairy farms.
Now it's different.
Now it's different. Yeah, and I don't like that at all.
I can understand that. So now that there is this, huge population boom, the courthouse is rather unable planning wise to expand the actual village itself. How would you like to see it beyond bringing in grocery stores and hardware stores, maybe, serve the needs of the community?
Well, it'd be nice if they could keep Main Street from stoplight to stoplight as close as what they have now, without any big box coming in. That would the business section is going to change some, but if they can maintain that small store atmosphere, and then when you go north of the court circle, you get to the residential area, and the county owns some of those. The county can have a big impact. I think they're buying the lot where Tucker Store was. They own the old Cora Hutchison house, the old big 2-story house across from the Presbyterian Church. One time they're talking about making it a parking lot. Well, that would just be terrible. You got these nice old big trees and whatnot. So it's one of those things you just chip away. The old Gloucester High School, which was adjacent to Botetourt Elementary School, that housed the superintendent's office. They tore that down, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or so ago. And my grandfather, remember, was the guy making the cinder blocks that built that building.
Wow.
In the early 1900s. So, it's something that lasts 100 years and it's gone. And it gets replaced with something that's not quite as nice looking.
Yeah.
Or you lose that atmosphere. You lose that look. And that could be a challenge, especially as those houses get older. If I was on Main Street, I would definitely, try and be a voice to try and maintain, and it's easy to chip away. A house goes and it's torn down and something else, one here, one there. A concerted effort, if they want to maintain it, a concerted effort needs to be made.
I have to agree with you. But the way that you experienced Gloucester was fundamentally rural.
Oh yeah, very much so. There are chickens in somebody's backyard.
Yeah. Well, my neighbor has them, and makes me feel rural. But how we use the land differently now that it's not rural, it's suburban. And I talked to the lady that runs Parks and Rec here, and she was saying, the way that, they use the parks is now fundamentally different at cultural arts centers versus like a place for kids to play baseball and things like that. So how has recreation and leisure activity and kind of tourism changed since you came here in the 50s?
Well, you talk about it. When we go to visit my aunt, my dad would take myself and my 2 brothers that were born at that time, were alive at that time, and we'd go over to the old Botetourt Elementary School. And they have a ball diamond in the back, and we'd play ball. Before we played ball, remember, a lot of dirt, no grass. It was, and in the summertime, you go to home plate, and then the dirt and dust is about 2 inches thick. And they were pickup games. You don't see much baseball pickup anymore with the kids. We didn't have soccer in those days. If we played ball with the ball, it was kickball with baseball rules. No soccer, that didn't exist. Beaver Dam didn't exist. Of course, down here we'd go fishing off the old pier, crabbing off the old pier. All salt water, no fresh water. Golf course was there when I was a kid. My mother said that even when she was young, growing up in Richmond, she'd come down and spend many summers here. that they would have dances at the country club. She said it was a lot of activity. She said it was probably as much to do as a teenager then as it is now. They had a bowling alley, they had a theater. She said there was a lot to do.
Where was the country club?
Where Gloucester golf course is, at the clubhouse, where,
Okay.
where they keep the golf carts now. It's an open area. They used to have dances in there.
Oh, that's really interesting. So she came in the summers
Yes.
and noted that there was more to do in the summers. What about you? Did you find that there was consistent stuff to do in the summers?
Well, we would only stay, 3 or 4 days or so, or, a weekend. And it was like paradise coming down here. I mean, it was like, well, if you came from the courthouse, I mean, we would thought, and there was almost no houses other than the Zanoni store coming down. So you thought you were coming to the end of the world. And then coming down the old lane and across the marsh and no houses at all. So, I mean, it was very, very rural. Grass growing up in the middle of the lanes, only the tire tracks, and the marsh road was level with the marsh, and Oyster Shell Road. So literally we'd come over, you can only come and go at low tide. We came over as high tide or up a little bit. One of us roll up our pants legs and take off the shoes and socks and walk across, get the boat, come around, and get the rest of the family. And we have it raised up now, so it's it comes over a couple times a year, but you just wait a couple hours and it's back down.
That's the stoicism I would expect from a waterman. Okay, so did you notice that a lot of other people were coming for 3 or 4 days or for the summer?
Oh, we didn't know anybody else. There was no other kids around. I mean, my cousins, my mother's brother's kids would come down sometimes, but no, there was two houses on the next point, no kids. There was just no other houses around here.
It's just your family.
Yeah, that was it. And we didn't know any of the other families up at the courthouse.
When did you get to know them? Clearly you know them now.
Many of them. And once we moved here in '74, and then house would go up here and there. You just introduce yourself, or you run into them. The old Zanoni store, after we moved here, was probably in business for another 8 or 10 years. You could still get groceries, gasoline, meat.
This is in the 70s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And you'd run into some of the neighbors. And everybody knew one another. You'd say, are you Mr. Smith's nephews? They pretty much knew that the older people knew the younger people more so than vice versa.
Yeah. And the country store is also a good way to meet people.
Yes.
Okay. And so the people that went to this country store, they walked.
We would bike.
You would bike.
We would bike. A lot of the older people would be in automobiles. Some would walk.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all of my questions.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to put on the record for the entire population of the University of Florida?
No. I have a friend of mine. I played golf with him today. He'd say, "Go Gators." He's a big Florida
Yes.
fan.
That's an amazing note to end on.